love the Russian fairy tales, but I don't want to be reading these forever, and this book is massive. So I tried to look ahead and pick out some. Oh, Rabbit Wombat, I'm sure it was great. I tried to pick out some stories that sounded interesting, at least based on the titles, and I tried to flip through a little bit. So I have a list of. I have a list of page numbers to look at, to go through, and then after that, unfortunately, a lot of the Baba Yaga stories in here are the longest stories in the book, and whether I want to get stuck in reading like these really long ones or not, who knows? But we'll get to those as well. So we're gonna do that today. Oh, so this shirt, funny story. I have very little interest in hockey whatsoever, but we were in Vancouver, and I love anything with a killer whale on it. So I was like, oh, that looks cool. So I bought the shirt. But that's about all my connection is to this team. But sure, if you... And yes, anytime I ever wore this to Hyper, Adam would always give me dirty looks because he is a fan of other teams. And that's fine also. Okay. Here we go. Oh, and again, certainly no pressure, but I do, in theory, I have the sound alerts thing, like the other home buddies do. I don't know how they work. I know that this is supposed to be a command, but it doesn't seem to do anything. But if you're on Twitch, if you go down, there should be a box for it. I don't know. Anyway, I put in some funny things. Whatever. Like I said, no big deal. Certainly no pressure for anybody. Okay, so the first story that we are going to read today is called Foma Barenikov. An interesting name. I like spending 50 boys on fart noises. Once upon a time, there lived an old woman who had a one-eyed son named Foma Barenikov. One day he went to plow his field with his wretched horse. He was suddenly overcome by misery and sat down on a mound of earth to ease himself. The flies buzzed and buzzed around the dung. He seized a twig, beat the swarm of flies, and began to count how many he had killed. He counted 500 of them, and many of them were still uncounted. Foma decided that they were numberless. He came to his horse and found 12 gadflies sitting on it. He slew them all. Then he returned to his mother and asked her for her solemn blessing. I have slain countless small fry, he said, and 12 mighty heroes. Let me go forth, mother, to do great deeds, for plowing the land is not a hero's business, but a peasant's. His mother gave him her blessing, praying that he might do great deeds and carry out heroic exploits. He hung his best basket at his girdle, took his blunt scythe off his shoulders, and placed it in the basket. He traveled along the road in unfamiliar country till he came to a post, and he wrote with chalk on this post, for although he had neither gold nor silver in his pocket, he did happen to have some chalk. Well, fancy that. He wrote, Champion Foma Barenikov, who slew 12 mighty heroes at one blow, and an unnumbered army in addition, passed this way. So yes, we did read a story that was very similar to this one, so far at least. Having written this, he went on. Ilya Muromets traveled along the same road, came to the post, beheld the inscription, and said, Here is the champion's mark. He does not spend gold nor silver, only chalk. And he wrote in silver, Following Foma Barenikov, Champion Ilya Muromets passed this way. He overtook Foma Barenikov and said, apparently the chalk inscription had impressed him, Mighty Foma Barenikov, where shall I ride, in front of you or behind you? Ride behind me, answered Foma. Young Alyosha Popovich traveled the same road. He came to the same post and saw from afar an inscription blazing like fire on the post. He read the inscriptions of Foma Barenikov and Ilya Muromets, drew pure gold from his pocket, and wrote, Following Ilya Muromets, Alyosha Popovich passed this way. He overtook Ilya Muromets and said, Tell me, Ilya Muromets, shall I ride in front of you or behind you? Ask not me, but my elder brother, Foma Barenikov. Young Alyosha Popovich rode up to Foma Barenikov. Brave Foma Barenikov, where shall Alyosha Popovich ride? Ride behind us. I'm not sure how they're writing in silver and gold. He's got a pocket full of gold. I don't know if it's... Yeah, I'm not sure what that means exactly. They traveled along the road in an unfamiliar country till they came to green gardens. Ilya Muromets and Alyosha Popovich pitched their white tents, and Foma Barenikov spread his pair of drawers. These gardens belonged to the Prussian king, and the Chinese king, aided by 6 mighty champions, was at that time waging war on the Prussian king. And the Prussian king sent a letter to Foma Barenikov saying, "The Chinese king is waging war against me. The Prussian king, will you aid me?" Foma was not strong in the art of reading. He gazed at the letter, shook his head, and said, "Very well." The Chinese king approached the city. Ilya Muromets and young Alyosha Popovich came to Foma Barenikov and spoke these words. "They are attacking the king, approaching his city. We must defend him. Will you go yourself or send us?" "You shall go, Ilyushka Muromets." Ilya Muromets slew all the attackers. Then the Chinese king sent forth his 6 champions and another unnumbered host of troops. Ilya Muromets and Alyosha Popovich came to Foma Barenikov, saying, "Tell us, Foma Barenikov, will you go yourself or will you send us?" "You shall go, Alyosha Popovich, my young brother." Young Alyosha Popovich rode forth and slew the host of troops and the 6 mighty champions. The Chinese king said, "I have still another champion, whom I have up until now kept for breeding purposes. Now I will let him fight too." So he brought an unnumbered host of troops with them, and with them his secret mighty champion. And the king said to him, "The Russian champion beats us not only by force, but by cunning. Now do everything that the Russian champion does." Ilya Muromets and young Alyosha Popovich came to Foma Barenikov asking, "Will you go yourself or will you send us?" "I shall go myself. Bring me my horse." The champions' horses were grazing in the open field, and Foma stood nearby eating oats. Ilya Muromets came to Foma's horse, and it began to rear and snap. Ilya Muromets grew angry, took Foma's horse by the tail, and flung him across the hedge. Young Alyosha Popovich said to him, "Did not Foma Barenikov see us? He will punish us for this." "Apparently his strength is not in his horse, but in himself," said Ilya Muromets, and brought the wretched nag to Foma Barenikov. Foma bestrode the horse and thought to himself, "Let them kill me. It won't be all at once." That'll be better. He rode forward, bending down to the horse's mane and blinking his eyes. The Chinese champion, remembering the king's instruction, also bent down to his horse's mane and blinked. Foma got off his horse, sat on a stone, and began to sharpen his scythe. The Chinese champion, too, got off his mighty horse and began to sharpen his sword. He saw that Foma Barenikov was one-eyed and thought, "He has closed one eye. I will be even trickier and close both eyes." He had no sooner closed his eyes than Foma Barenikov cut off his head. Foma took the champion's mighty steed, tried to mount it, but could not. So Foma tied the mighty steed to a 100-year-old oak, climbed up the tree, and leaped onto the steed. As soon as the steed felt a rider on his back, he rushed forward, tearing out the oak with its roots. He galloped with all his mighty strength, dragging the enormous oak after him. Foma Barenikov cried, "Help! Help!" But the stupid Chinese soldiers did not know the Russian language, and from fear took to their heels. The mighty horse trampled them from under his hooves and smote them with the 100-year oak. He slew them all to the last man. Now the Chinese king wrote a letter to Foma Barenikov, saying, "Never again shall I wage war against you." That promise was just what Foma wanted. Ilya Muromets and young Alyosha Popovich marveled at Foma Barenikov. Now Foma went to the Prussian king. "What shall I reward you with?" asked the king. "Take as much gold from my treasure as you will, or half my glorious kingdom, or my beautiful daughter." "Give me the beautiful daughter," Foma replied, "and invite to the wedding my younger brothers, Ilya Muromets and young Alyosha Popovich." And Foma Barenikov married the beautiful princess. Thus not only mighty men have luck, he who shouts loudest about himself fares best. The end. Sound is a bit low. Oh, I think I had lowered this for when I was on hyper. Is that better? Anyone who is watching, is the sound okay now? Input audio captured. Talking normally, yeah, I'm about a little over halfway, so that should be still a bit low, huh? Interesting. Well, transition. How about now? Okay. Well, I increased it a little bit. Yeah, let me know. There are always settings to play with. Better? Okay, cool. Like I said, there are always settings to play with and settings to screw up. So again, there are multiple tales about these characters, the Knights of Russia, Ilya Muromets, and various other ones. But it's an interesting lesson at the end. Yes, Rabid Wombat, 100%. He who shouts loudest about himself fares best. So go on. Everybody should take that advice. Go on and shout loudly about yourself. Proclaim how excellent you are. On Saturday night, again, for those who weren't here, when I was going to read the limericks, I was trying desperately to find where the mature audience setting was in Twitch, but it's hidden quite expertly. But Solkatsu was nice enough to tell me afterwards, so now I know for next time. Okay, next, the story we are going to read: The Peasant, the Bear, and the Fox. Now again, we've heard all of these characters before, so let's see what trouble they can get into this time. A peasant was plowing a field. A bear came to him and said, "Peasant, I will break your bones." "No, do not touch me. I am sowing turnips here, and I will take only the roots for myself and give you the tops." "So be it," said the bear, "but if you cheat me, do not dare to come into my forest for wood." Having said this, he went off into the thickets. Harvest time came. The peasant dug the turnips, and the bear came out of the thicket, saying, "Now, peasant, let us share." "Very well, little bear, I will bring you the tops." And the peasant brought him a cart full of leaves and stalks. The bear was satisfied that the division was honest. The peasant loaded his turnips on a cart and started driving to town to sell them. The bear met him and asked, "Peasant, where are you going?" "I am going to town, little bear, to sell my roots." "Let me taste one of those roots." The peasant gave him a turnip. When the bear ate it, he began to roar, "Aha! So you've cheated me, peasant. Your roots are sweet. Do not dare come to me for wood. I will tear you to pieces." The peasant returned from town and was afraid to go to the forest. He burned his shelves and his benches and his tubs, but in the end there was nothing he could do. He had to go to the forest. He drove in quietly. From somewhere, a fox came running. "Why do you walk on tiptoe, little peasant?" she asked. "I am afraid of the bear. He is angry at me and has threatened to tear me to pieces." "Don't fear the bear. Chop your wood, and I will make noises like those the hunters make. If the bear asks, 'What is this?' say, 'It is a bear and wolf hunt.'" The peasant began to cut wood. Suddenly the bear rushed toward him, crying, "Hey, old man, what is this noise?" The peasant said, "It is a bear and wolf hunt." "Oh, little peasant, put me in your sledge, cover me with wood, and tie me with a rope. They will think I am a log." The peasant put him in the sledge, tied him with a rope, and hit him on the head with the butt end of his axe until he was dead. The fox came and said, "Where is the bear?" "He is dead." "Well, little peasant, now you must treat me to something." "Please, little fox, come to my house. I shall indeed treat you." The peasant drove home, and the fox ran ahead of him. When the peasant was close to his house, he whistled to his dogs and set them on the fox. The fox ran to the wood, jumped into a hole to hide, and said, "Oh, little eyes, what did you do while I was running?" "Oh, little fox, we saw to it that you did not stumble." "And you, little ears, what did you do?" "We listened all the time to hear whether the hounds were far behind." "And you, tail, what did you do?" I, said the tail, threw myself between your legs to entangle you, so that you would fall and be torn to pieces by the dogs. Ah, you scoundrel, let the dogs eat you then. And sticking her tail out of the hole, the fox cried, Eat the fox's tail, dogs! The dogs dragged the fox out by the tail and strangled her. So does it often happen. Because of the tail, the head perishes. Boom. There we get another just like brutal, life is terrible kind of fairy tale. Yeah, and the bears are dumb. Bears are not too smart. And I guess they like turnips. A little bit of that, like my, what large eyes you have. The fox talking to itself in its various and sundry parts stuck in this little hole. Let's go to 304. I appreciate those of you who are here with me. I know that some other people are streaming this morning. You have many choices in your entertainment, so I appreciate you stopping by here. Okay, so this one, I thought the title was very interesting. It is called The Milk of Wild Beasts. In a certain land, not in our kingdom, there lived a king who had a son named Ivan and a daughter named Elena the Fair. A bear with iron fur appeared in this kingdom and began to eat the king's subjects. The bear ate one person after another, and the king sat powerless and wondered how he could save his own children. He ordered a high tower to be built, seated Prince Ivan and Elena the Fair on top of it, and provided them with supplies for 5 years. An iron bear, dang. Oh, well, a bear with iron fur. The bear ate up all the people, ran into the royal palace, and out of spite began to gnaw on a birch broom. Do not bite me, bear with iron fur, the broom said to him. Instead, go out into the open. There you will see a tower, and on that tower sit Prince Ivan and Elena the Fair. The bear came to the tower and began to shake it. Prince Ivan took fright and threw him some food. The bear ate it and lay down to sleep. Because, of course, bears are super greedy and typically very sleepy. The bear slept, and Prince Ivan and Elena the Fair ran away as fast as they could. On the road, they met a horse. Horse, horse, save us, they said. But no sooner had they mounted the horse than the bear caught up with them. He tore the horse to pieces, took the prince and princess in his jaws, and brought them back to the pillar. They gave him food, he ate it, and again he went to sleep. The bear slept, and Prince Ivan and Elena the Fair ran away as fast as they could. On the way, they met some geese. Geese, geese, save us, they cried. They sat on the geese and flew off, but the bear awoke, singed the geese with a flame, and brought the prince and princess back to the pillar. Again, they gave him food, he ate it, and again he fell asleep. I'm not sure how this bear is producing fire, but it makes as much sense as a prince and princess riding on geese. The bear slept, and Prince Ivan and Elena the Fair ran away as fast as they could. On the road stood a 3-year-old bullock. Bullock, bullock, save us! The bear with iron fur is pursuing us. Sit on me, said the bullock. You, Prince Ivan, sit with your back to my head, and when you see the bear coming, tell me. As soon as the bear caught up with them, the bullock relieved himself and pasted the bear's eyes shut with dung. Yeah, it's pretty gross. 3 times the bear caught up with them, and 3 times the bullock pasted his eyes shut. Well, this bullock is full of shit. Then the bullock began to cross a river. The bear went into the river after him and drowned. Ivan and Elena were hungry, and the bullock said to them, Slaughter me and eat my flesh, but gather my bones together and strike them. From them will arise a little fist of a man as big as an inch, with a beard a cubit long. He will do everything for you that needs to be done. Wow, okay. Time went by. They had eaten the bullock, and again wanted to eat. They lightly struck the bones, and the little fist of a man appeared. They went to the woods. In the woods stood a house, and that house was a robber's lair. Little Fist killed the robbers and their chieftain, and put their bodies in a certain room. He told Elena not to go there, but she could not restrain herself, looked in, and fell in love with the chieftain's head. I definitely picked a good story with this one. She asked Prince Ivan to get for her the water of life and the water of death. As soon as she had the water of life and the water of death, she brought the chieftain back to life and plotted with him how to destroy Prince Ivan. First, they sent him to get wolf's milk. Prince Ivan went with Little Fist. They found the she-wolf and said to her, "Give us some milk." She asked them to take her wolf cub too, because he was a good-for-nothing. Having taken the milk and the young wolf, they came back to Elena the Fair. They gave her the milk and kept the young wolf for themselves. Since the lovers had not been able to destroy Prince Ivan in this way, they sent him to get bear's milk. Prince Ivan and Little Fist went to get bear's milk. They found the she-bear and said, "Give us some milk." She asked them to take the young bear too, because he was a good-for-nothing. This forest is full of awful animal children. Taking the milk and the young bear, they came back to Elena the Fair. They gave her the milk and kept the young bear. Since the lovers had not been able to destroy Prince Ivan in this way, they sent him to get lion's milk. Prince Ivan went with Little Fist. They found the lioness and took her milk, and she asked them to take her lion cub too, because he was a good-for-nothing. They returned to Elena the Fair, gave her the milk, and kept the young lion. The chieftain and Elena the Fair, seeing that Prince Ivan could not be destroyed in this way, sent him to get the eggs of the Firebird. Prince Ivan and Little Fist went to get the eggs. They found the Firebird, but when they tried to take the eggs, she became enraged and swallowed Little Fist. And Prince Ivan went home without the eggs. He came to Elena the Fair and told her that he had been unable to get the eggs and that the Firebird had swallowed Little Fist. Elena the Fair and the chieftain were overjoyed and thought that Prince Ivan would be helpless now, without Little Fist. They ordered him to be killed. Prince Ivan heard this order and asked his sister whether he might bathe before dying. Welcome, Eridinsk. You came in the middle of a doozy of a story. I can't even begin to explain how we got to where we are. Elena the Fair ordered the bath to be heated. Prince Ivan went to the bath, and Elena the Fair sent someone to tell him to wash faster. Prince Ivan did not obey her. He continued washing himself unhurriedly. Suddenly, the young wolf, the young bear, and the young lion ran to him and told him that Little Fist had escaped from the Firebird and would soon come to him. Prince Ivan ordered them to lie down on the threshold and kept on washing. Elena the Fair again sent someone to tell him to wash faster, and that if he did not finish soon, she would come herself. Prince Ivan still disobeyed her and did not come out of the bath. Elena the Fair waited and waited, became impatient, and with the chieftain went to see what Prince Ivan was doing. When she came to the bath, she saw that he was still washing himself and had not obeyed her order. She grew angry and boxed his ear. Suddenly, Little Fist appeared, ordered the young wolf, the young bear, and the young lion to tear the chieftain to little pieces, and tied Elena naked to a tree so that her body might be devoured by mosquitoes and flies. Then he and Prince Ivan set out traveling. In the distance they beheld a great palace. Little Fist said, "Do you not want to marry Prince Ivan? In this house lives a champion maiden. She seeks a brave youth who is strong enough to defeat her." They went to her house. Before reaching it, Prince Ivan mounted a horse. Little Fist mounted behind him, and they challenged the champion maiden to combat. They fought and fought. The champion maiden struck Prince Ivan in the chest, and he almost fell to the ground, but Little Fist held him. Then Prince Ivan struck the champion maiden with his spear, and she fell from her horse at once. When he had knocked her down, she said, "Now, Prince Ivan, you may marry me." Oh, love at first sight. Speedily a tale is spun, less speedily a deed is done. Those are good words. Prince Ivan married a champion maiden. "Well, Prince Ivan," Little Fist said to him, "if you don't feel well the first night, come to me. I will help you in your trouble." Prince Ivan went to bed with the champion maiden. Suddenly she put her hand on his chest, and he felt ill. He asked her to let him go out. When he got outside, he called Little Fist and told him that the champion maiden wanted to strangle him. Little Fist went to the champion maiden and began to belabor her, repeating, "Respect your husband! Respect your husband!" From then on, they began to live happily and to prosper. Sometime later, the champion maiden asked Prince Ivan to untie Elena the Fair and to take her to live in their house. He straightway sent to have her untied and brought to him. Elena the Fair lived in his house for a long time. One day she said to him, "Brother, let me pick the lice from your head." She began to pick his lice and thrust a dead tooth into his head. Prince Ivan began to die. The young lion saw that Prince Ivan was dying and pulled the dead tooth out. The prince began to come back to life, and the young lion began to die. The young bear pulled out the tooth, the young lion began to come back to life, and the young bear began to die. A fox saw that he was dying, she pulled out the dead tooth, and because she was cleverer than all of them, when she pulled out the tooth, she threw it into a pan, and it crumbled to pieces. To punish his sister for this wicked deed, Prince Ivan ordered that Elena the Fair be tied to the tail of a mighty horse, and that the horse be set loose in the open field. I was there and drank mead. It ran down my mustache, but did not go into my mouth. The end. You know, I kind of just want to end with that one, because it was possibly the most batshit story we've read so far. So clearly another one of these stories that has episodes to it, that's probably built from separate little stories, or stories from different traditions. We've got an iron bear eating everyone eating everyone in a kingdom. We've got, right off the bat, the bear talks, a broom talks back to him. We've got the two kids put up in essentially a tall tower with enough food for 5 years to keep them safe. The bear still assaults them. They try to get away on various animals, but the animals are not helpful. And the bear is mighty. It breathes fire. It does all this crazy stuff. They finally find an incredibly helpful young bull who not only is smart, is fast, can can't help to think that translation is refined. Again, I'm sure this is this translation is what did we say? It's about 100 years old. No, not that long, but it's not new. Let's say. So yeah, this bull is smart, is fast. It shits on command right in the bear's eyes, and then it tells them that that they should kill it, eat it, knock its bones together, and this tiny magical creature will arise from it. This little fist, which again is just immensely helpful in every possible way, from killing their enemies to helping the prince gather milk from all these animals, to helping him on his wedding night when he felt ill. And then again, we've got the Champion Maidens. We've heard stories like this before about, and of course in lots of mythologies, about the girl who will only get married to the person who can beat her in various contests of skill and strength and speed. Yeah, that one's pretty wild. And again, the sister who first gets tied up naked to be eaten by mosquitoes and flies, then is allowed to come to their house, and then tries to kill her brother by sticking a dead tooth into his head. That does its own whole own thing. And then yes, she is dragged by a horse, seemingly until she dies, maybe forever. Who knows? It's Russian fairy tales for you. Ooh, my drink matches my shirt. Cool. Let's move on. 333. Ooh. The Peasant and the Corpse. A peasant was driving a cart full of pottery. His horse got tired and stopped near a graveyard. The peasant unharnessed it, let it graze, and lay down to rest on a grave, but somehow could not fall asleep. What? You can't just go to a graveyard and fall asleep on a grave? Suddenly, the grave under him began to open. Feeling this, he jumped to his feet. The grave opened wide, and out of it came a corpse, holding a coffin lid and dressed in a white shroud. The corpse ran to the church, put the coffin lid in the doorway, and went to the village. Our peasant was a courageous man. He took the coffin lid and stood near his cart, waiting to see what would happen next. After a while, the corpse came back and discovered that his coffin lid was gone. He began to follow the tracks, reached the peasant, and said, "Give me back my coffin lid, or I will tear you to pieces." "And what is my axe for?" the peasant answered. "I will cut you to pieces myself." "Please, my good man, give it back to me." Wait, hold on. I think I missed something. Okay. The corpse came back and said, "Give me back my coffin lid, or I will tear you to pieces." "And what is my axe for?" the peasant answered. "I will cut you to pieces myself." "Please, my good man, give it back to me," the corpse implored. Wait, it seems like there's... Oh. All of the quotes are just in a paragraph. They're not, like, divided out. But it seems like the back and forth ends at the wrong person. Anyway, we'll go on. "I will not give it to you," said the peasant, "unless you tell me where you have been and what you have done." "I was in the village, and I killed 2 young fellows there." "Now tell me how they can be brought back to life." Willy-nilly, the corpse had to comply. "Cut the left flap from my shroud," he said, "and take it with you. When you come to the house of the murdered men, fill a pot with burning coal, and put the piece of shroud in it, and close the door. The smoke will bring them back to life at once." The peasant cut off the left flap of the shroud and returned the coffin lid. The corpse went back to his grave, and the grave opened. He began to descend into it, when suddenly the cocks crowed, and he had no time to cover himself properly. One end of the coffin lid remained outside. The peasant saw and took note of all of this. Daybreak came. He harnessed his horse and drove to the village. He heard lamentations and cries in one house. He entered it and found that 2 young fellows were dead there. "Do not weep," he said. "I can bring them back to life." "Do bring them back to life," said the parents. "We will give you half our possessions." The peasant did as the corpse had told him, and the 2 young fellows came back to life. Their families were overjoyed, but at once seized the peasant and tied him with ropes. "Now, you wise man," they said, "we shall take you to the authorities. Since you knew how to bring them back to life, you surely killed them too." "Ah, ye faithful, don't you fear God?" cried the peasant, and he told them everything that had happened to him during the night. The villagers were called together. The people went to the graveyard, found the grave from which the corpse had emerged, dug it up, and thrust a spike of aspen wood straight into his heart, so that he could no longer rise up and kill people. The peasant was richly rewarded and allowed to return home in peace. Is willy-nilly the name of the corpse? That'd be pretty good. Yeah, I don't... Okay, so clearly we have a vampire story. We have a dead body coming back to life, going back into the town, killing people. It can ostensibly, right? This creature can kill people and bring them back to life, much as a vampire does, right? And then how do they stop it from ever rising again? With a stake through its heart. Dun dun dun. I know never to actually trust OBS's information, but it's giving me some odd stuff right now. But that's okay. Yeah, so I thought that one when I was flipping through and I saw the stake to the heart part. I was like, ooh, let's read that one. We've heard mention in a few of these about the water of life and the water of death, which is pretty cool. Again, something that is in so many different cultures and in ancient things. Okay, 363. Yeah, and I don't know. Again, there's a tradition in some of these stories that they end with that sort of stock phrase that I was drinking mead or wine or beer and it ran down my mustache and didn't get into my mouth. I don't know. Yeah, a zombie and a vampire, but again, like the vampire sort of sensibilities. I think there's a story coming up where they actually explicitly call it a vampire. Welcome, Zardoz. Thanks for dropping in. And you know what? You came at the exact right moment because we are about to read a story that is simply titled Baba Yaga. It's like you planned it, Zardoz. Or like a wizard, you're just always on time. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and his wife. When the old man became a widower... Wow. The story just starts right off with an old woman dying. When the old man became a widower, he married another wife, although he had a daughter from his first wife. The wicked stepmother disliked the girl, beat her, and pondered how she might destroy her. One day the father went away somewhere, and the stepmother said to the girl, "Go to your aunt, my sister. Ask her for a needle and some thread to sew a shirt for you." That aunt was Baba Yaga, the bony-legged. The girl was not stupid. What a compliment. And she first went to her own aunt. "Good day, auntie," she said. "Good day, my beloved. What have you come for?" said her aunt. I'll switch to aunt because it's easier to tell what the hell I'm talking about. "Mother has sent me to her sister to ask for a needle and thread to sew me a shirt." The aunt told her what to do. "My little niece," she said, "when you get there, a birch will lash your eyes, but do you tie it with a ribbon. The gates will bang and creak at you, but do you pour some oil on their hinges. Dogs will want to tear you apart, but do you throw them some bread. A cat will scratch your eyes, but do you give him some ham." The girl went her way. She walked and finally arrived at her other aunt's. She saw a little hut, and in it sat Baba Yaga, the bony-legged. "Good day, auntie," said the girl. "Good day, my beloved." "Mother sent me to ask for a needle and thread to sew me a shirt." "Very well. Meanwhile, sit down and weave." The girl sat at the loom, and Baba Yaga went out and said to her maid, "Go and heat a bath and wash my niece, but be careful. I want to eat her for breakfast." The girl sat there half dead with fright and begged the maid, "My dear, do not burn so much wood. Pour water over it and bring the water in a sieve." And she gave the maid a kerchief. Baba Yaga waited. She came to the widow and asked, She came to the window and asked, "Are you weaving, little niece? Are you weaving, my darling?" "I am weaving, auntie. I am weaving, my dear." Baba Yaga went away from the window, and the girl gave ham to the cat and asked him, "Is there no way of getting away from here?" "Here is a comb and a towel," said the cat. "Take them and run away. Baba Yaga will pursue you. But do you put your ear to the ground, and when you hear her coming close, throw the towel, and there will be a wide, wide river. And if Baba Yaga crosses the river and begins to catch up with you, put your ear to the ground again, and when you hear her coming close, throw your comb, and there will be a very thick forest. She will not be able to get through it." The girl took the towel and the comb and ran. The dogs wanted to tear her, but she threw them some bread, and they let her pass. The gates wanted to bang shut, but she poured some oil on their hinges, and they let her pass. The birch wanted to lash her eyes, but she tied it with a ribbon, and it let her pass. Meanwhile, the cat sat at the loom and wove. He did not so much weave as tangle everything up. Fucking cats. Typical. Baba Yaga came to the window and asked, "Are you weaving, little niece? Are you weaving, my darling?" I am weaving, auntie, I am weaving, my dear, answered the cat in a rough voice. Baba Yaga rushed into the hut, saw that the girl had gone, and took to beating the cat and scolding him for not having scratched out the girl's eyes. I have served you so many years, said the cat, and you have not given me even a bone, but she gave me a piece of ham. Baba Yaga flung herself on the dogs, the gate, the birch, and the maid, and began to thrash and scold them all. The dogs said to her, We have served you so long, and you have not even thrown us a burnt crust, but she gave us bread. The gate said, I have served you so long, and you have not even poured water on my hinges, but she poured oil. The birch said, I have served you so long, and you have not even tied me with a thread, but she tied me with a ribbon. The maid said, I have served you so long, and you have not given me even a rag, but she gave me a kerchief. Baba Yaga the bony-legged jumped on her mortar, goaded it on with her pestle, swept away her tracks with a broom, and flew in pursuit of the girl. The girl put her ear to the ground and heard Baba Yaga coming close. She threw her towel, and there was a wide, wide river. Baba Yaga came to the river and gnashed her teeth with rage. She returned home, took her oxen, and drove them to the river. The oxen drank the river clean. Then she set out again in pursuit. The girl put her ear to the ground and heard Baba Yaga coming close. She threw her comb, and there grew up a deep and terrifying forest. Baba Yaga began to gnaw it, but no matter how she tried, she could not gnaw through it, and she turned back. Meanwhile, the old man had come home and asked, Where is my daughter? She has gone to her aunt, said the stepmother. After a while, the girl also came home. Where have you been? Her father asked her. Ah, father, she said, mother sent me to auntie for a needle and thread to sew me a shirt, but the aunt was Baba Yaga and she wanted to eat me. How did you get away, my daughter? The daughter told him how. When the old man heard all this, he grew angry at his wife and shot her to death. And then he and his daughter began to live and prosper. I was there and drank mead and beer. It ran down my mustache, but it never got into my mouth. Yes, Eridansk. She flew with a mortar and pestle, sitting in the mortar, seemingly, and also with the broom behind her. Poor Baba Yaga. She can't even get a young lady to eat. It's very sad. I really, really love the notes here on the towel that turns into a river and the comb that turns into a forest. And this reminds me, I don't remember the exact definition, but this reminds me of sympathetic magic, where if you do magic against some small piece of something, it affects something else in a related but larger way. So again, what does a towel do? A towel soaks up water. So a magical towel will have a lot of water in it that then can create a river. Same thing with a comb. If you think a comb, it has hairs in it, the hairs could grow into a mighty forest. It's a super cool visual. Was this the first time someone was shot? We've had soldiers. I think we've had soldiers with guns. Yeah, but I think this is the first time it specifically said, like, straight up just shooting someone to death. $369. All right. I saw this title and I knew we had to do it. Husband and Wife. There were once a husband and wife who seemed to live well, but the wife was an ingenious woman. When the husband went away, she was merry. When he came back, she fell ill. She always tried to find work for him to do to get rid of him. One day she would send him hither, the next day thither, and while he was away, she would give little parties and feasts. Her husband would return, find everything clean and in order, and his wife aching and groaning and lying on the bench. The husband believed that she was ill, and for his part almost wept. One day she conceived the idea of sending him to get medicine in Krimgard. Or, no, I'm sorry, Krimgrad. That sounds more like it. The husband went. On the way he met a soldier who asked, "Whither are you going, peasant?" "To Krimgrad to get a medicine." "Who is sick?" "My wife." Go back without fail. I am an expert healer myself. I will go with you." Then he commanded, "Left turn." Soon they found themselves near the peasant's barn. "Have your wife sit up," said the expert. "I will find out how sick she is." The husband entered the courtyard, put his ear to the door, and heard sounds of games, dances, and merriment. The soldier's heart boiled. He struck the door, and it opened. The wife was moving about like a swan. A young fellow capered in front of her. Green wine was flowing on the table. The soldier came just in time. He drank a cup of wine and began to cut capers. The wife found him to her liking. What a soldier! What a handsome fellow! And so keen, so clever, as though he had lived there all his life. Yes, tomorrow there would be cakes to bake. "Soldier," she said, "go to the barn. Bring a bundle of straw." The soldier went, gathered the straw, wrapped the husband in it, tied it with a rope, slung it over his shoulders, and brought it to the wife. She was glad and intoned a song. The husband went to Krimgrad to buy healing herbs to cure the wife's belly with plants. He will never get there. He will never come back. Hey, soldier, accompany me. The soldier began his song. Do you hear, straw, what's going on here? Oh, your song is no good. Mine is better. Let us sing it together. The husband went to Krimgrad to buy healing herbs to cure the wife's belly with plants. She sang loudly, and the soldier sang even more loudly. Do you hear, straw, what's going on here? The whip is hanging on the wall, and it should be on a back. The straw heard and wriggled. The rope burst. The husband jumped out, snatched the whip, and began to belabor his wife. He cured her in no time. Oof. Oh, he cured her, all right. I should put an explicit content warning on these streams for misogyny, domestic abuse, spousal abuse, infidelity, all those sorts of things. 455. But yes, a very clever, very helpful soldier. All right, you know we couldn't end Russian fairy tales without the bear and the cock. A certain old man had a foolish son. The fool asked his father to find him a wife. "And if you don't find me a wife," he said, "I will smash up the stove." "But how can I find you a wife?" the father said. "I have no money." "You have no money, but we have an ox. Sell him to be slaughtered." The ox heard this and ran away to the woods. The fool kept urging his father without respite, "Find me a wife! Find me a wife!" "But I have no money, I tell you." "You have no money, but we have a cock. Slay him, bake a pie, and sell it." The cock heard this and flew away to the woods. The fool again urged his father, "Find me a wife, or I will smash up the stove." The father said, "I would gladly find you a wife, but I have no money." "You have no money, but you have a sheep. Sell it to be slaughtered." The sheep heard this and ran away to the woods. The ox, the sheep, and the cock joined company and built themselves a hut in the woods. The bear learned about it, wanted to eat them, and came to the hut. The cock saw him and began to flutter above the roost, flapping his wings and crowing, "Where, where, where? Give him to me here. I will trample him with my feet, cut him with an axe. A knife is right here, and a nail is right there. We'll slaughter him here and hang him up there." The bear took fright and took to his heels. He ran and ran till he dropped from fright and died. The fool went into the woods, found the bear, removed his skin, and sold it, and with that money got him a wife. Then the ox, the sheep, and the cock came back home. And there we have The cock. Smart animals, again, except for the bear. The bear is dumb. Bear is dumb as shit in these stories. But he was so afraid that it just died. We have a relative who lives in Colorado who has to deal with bears all the time. And indeed once had to kill a bear. And they ate it. So, it was a whole thing. It's wild out there in Colorado. Yes, the bears are not smart in these stories. Okay, and again, this one, obviously there's so many tales of animals and various animal combinations. Excuse me. But this animal combination definitely jumped out at me. And it's also very short. The raven and the lobster. Not two animals you would expect to interact ever. A raven flew above the sea, looked down, and saw a lobster. She grabbed him and took him into the woods, intending to perch somewhere on a branch and eat a good meal. The lobster saw that his end was coming and said to the raven, 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 I knew your father and mother. They were fine people. Humph, answered the raven without opening her mouth. And I know your brothers and sisters too. What fine people they are. Humph. But although they are all fine people, they are not equal to you. I think that in all the world there was no one wiser than you. Aha! Cawed the raven, opening her mouth wide, and dropped the lobster into the sea. The end. Okay. Gotcha, raven. That smart lobster made you open your beak and dropped him back into the ocean. Yeah, I mean, it has similarities to like animals working together and then one betraying the other or tricking the other. Yeah, there are various stories like that. Okay, let me find a good Baba Yaga story, because there are a fair amount of them, but again, they're typically like the longest of the tales. The Baba Yaga ones, not that one. 553. Maria Morevna. No. 447. Oh, should we do this one? Okay. probably end on this one. Hey Uzi, how's it going? I'm a fan of Vancouver, and I'm a fan of killer whales. So I got the shirt. So the raven was still flying back toward the forest, was still over the water, I think is what was going on there. I mean, again, we can only dissect these stories so much. Rock lobster. Okay. So Vasilisa the Beautiful, and this is a character that we've heard of before as well. Another stock character. In a certain kingdom there lived a merchant. Although he had been married for 12 years, he had only one daughter, called Vasilisa the Beautiful. When the girl was 8 years old, her mother died. On her deathbed, the merchant's wife called her daughter, took a doll from under her coverlet, gave it to the girl, and said, "Listen, Vasilisushka." These diminutives sometimes are a mouthful. "Remember and heed my last words. I am dying, and together with my maternal blessing I leave you this doll. Always keep it with you, and do not show it to anyone. If you get in trouble, give the doll food and ask its advice. When it has eaten, it will tell you what to do in your trouble." Then the mother kissed her child and died. Ooh, is this going to be like Child's Play? A little Chucky. After his wife's death, the merchant mourned as is proper, and then began to think of marrying again. He was a handsome man and had no difficulty in finding a bride, but he liked best a certain widow. Because she was elderly and had 2 daughters of her own, of almost the exact same age as Vasilisa, he thought that she was an experienced housewife and mother. So he married her, but was deceived, for she did not turn out to be a good mother for his Vasilisa. Vasilisa was the most beautiful girl in her village. Her stepmother and stepsisters were jealous of her beauty and tormented her by giving her all kinds of work to do, hoping that she would grow thin from toil and tanned from exposure to the wind and sun. In truth, she had a most miserable life. But Vasilisa bore all this without complaint and became lovelier and more buxom every day, while the stepmother and her daughters grew thin and ugly from spite, although they always sat with folded hands like ladies. A lot of things going on right here. How did this all come about? Vasilisa was helped by her doll. Without its aid, the girl could never have managed all that work. In return, Vasilisa sometimes did not eat, but kept the choicest morsels for her doll. And at night, when everyone was asleep, she would lock herself in the little room in which she lived, and would give the doll a treat, saying, "Now, little doll, eat, and listen to my troubles. I live in my father's house, but am deprived of all joy. A wicked stepmother is driving me from the white world. Tell me how I should live and what I should do." The doll would eat, then would give her advice and comfort her in her trouble, and in the morning she would perform all the chores for Vasilisa, who rested in the shade and picked flowers while the flower beds were weeded, the cabbage sprayed, the water brought in, and the stove fired. The doll even showed Vasilisa an herb that would protect her from sunburn. She lived an easy life, thanks to her doll. Several years went by. Vasilisa grew up and reached the marriage age. Wow, my goodness. So she was several years before marriage age, which I assume is very young in this, and she was already so beautiful and buxom. She was wooed by all the young men in the village, but no one would even look at the stepmother's daughters. The stepmother was more spiteful than ever, and her answer to all the suitors was, "I will not give the youngest in marriage before the elder ones." And each time she sent a suitor away, she vented her anger on Vasilisa in cruel blows. One day the merchant had to leave home for a long time in order to trade in distant lands. The stepmother moved to another house. Near that house, thank you for the follow, Patricia from Tokyo. Hopefully you're enjoying our Russian fairy tales. Yes. The stepmother moved to another house. Near that house was a thick forest, and in a glade of that forest there stood a hut, and in that hut lived Baba Yaga. She never allowed anyone to come near her, and ate human beings as if they were chickens. Having moved into the new house, the merchant's wife, hating Vasilisa, repeatedly sent the girl to the woods for one thing or another, but each time Vasilisa returned home safe and sound, her doll had shown her the way and kept her far from Baba Yaga's hut. Autumn came. The stepmother gave evening work to all the 3 maidens. The oldest had to make lace, the second had to knit stockings, and Vasilisa had to spin, and each one had to finish her task. The stepmother put out the lights all over the house, leaving only one candle in the room where the girls worked, and went to bed. The girls worked. The candle began to smoke. One of the sisters took up scissors to trim it, but instead, following her mother's orders, She snuffed it out, as though inadvertently. "What shall we do now?" asked the girls. "There is no light in the house, and our tasks are not finished." "Someone must run to Baba Yaga and get some light." "The pins on my lace give me light," said the one who was making lace. "I shall not go." "I shall not go either," said the one who was knitting stockings. "My knitting needles give me light." "Then you must go," both of them cried to their stepsister. "Go to Baba Yaga." And they pushed Vasilisa out of the room. She went to her own little room, put the supper she had prepared before her doll, and said, "Now, dolly, eat, and aid me in my need. They are sending me to Baba Yaga for a light, and she will eat me up." The doll ate the supper, and its eyes gleamed like 2 candles. "Fear not, Vasilisushka," it said. "Go where you are sent, only keep me with you all the time. With me in your pocket, you will suffer no harm from Baba Yaga." Vasilisa made ready, put her doll in her pocket, and, having made the sign of the cross, went into the deep forest. As we've said, Christianity pops up every now and again in these stories. Not too often, but every so often. She walked in fear and trembling. Suddenly, a horseman galloped past her. His face was white. He was dressed in white. His horse was white, and his horse's trappings were white. Daybreak came to the woods. She walked on further, and a second horseman galloped past her. He was all red. He was dressed in red, and his horse was red. The sun began to rise. Vasilisa walked the whole night and the whole day, and only on the following evening did she come to the glade where Baba Yaga's hut stood. The fence around the hut was made of human bones, and on the spikes were human skulls with staring eyes, and a mouth with sharp teeth in place. With staring eyes. The doors had human legs for doorposts, human hands for bolts, and a mouth with sharp teeth in place of a lock. Vasilisa was numb with horror and stood rooted to the spot. Suddenly, another horseman rode by. He was all black. He was dressed in black, and his horse was black. He galloped up to Baba Yaga's door and vanished, as though the earth had swallowed him up. Night came. But the darkness did not last long. The eyes of all the skulls on the fence began to gleam, and the glade was as bright as day. Vasilisa shuddered with fear, but not knowing where to run, remained on the spot. Soon a terrible noise resounded through the woods. The trees crackled, the dry leaves rustled. From the woods, Baba Yaga drove out in a mortar, prodding it on with her pestle, and sweeping her traces with a broom. She rode up to the gate, stopped, and sniffing the air around her, cried, "Fie, fie! I smell a Russian smell. Who is here?" Vasilisa came up to the old witch and, trembling with fear, bowed low to her and said, "It is I, grandmother. My stepsister sent me to get some light." "Very well," said Baba Yaga. "I know them. But before I give you the light, you must live with me and work for me. If not, I will eat you up." Then she turned to the gate and cried, "Hey, my strong bolts, unlock! Open up my wide gate." The gate opened, and Baba Yaga drove in whistling. Vasilisa followed her, and then everything closed again. Having entered the room, Baba Yaga stretched herself out in her chair and said to Vasilisa, "Serve me what is in the stove. I am hungry." Vasilisa lit a torch from the skulls on the fence and began to serve Yaga the food from the stove, and enough food had been prepared for 10 people. She brought kvass, mead, beer, and wine from the cellar. The old witch ate and drank everything, leaving for Vasilisa only a little cabbage soup, a crust of bread, and a piece of pork. Then Baba Yaga made ready to go to bed and said, "Tomorrow, after I go, see to it that you sweep the yard, clean the hut, cook the dinner, wash the linen, and go to the corn bin and sort out a bushel of wheat. And let everything be done, or I will eat you up." Having given these orders, Baba Yaga began to snore. Vasilisa sent the remnants of the old witch's supper before her doll, wept bitter tears, and said, "Here, dolly, eat, and aid me in my need. Baba Yaga has given me a hard task to do, and threatens to eat me up if I do not do it. Help me." The doll answered, "Fear not, Vasilisa the Beautiful. Eat your supper, say your prayers, and go to sleep. The morning is wiser than the evening." It's a cool note. Very early next morning, Vasilisa awoke after Baba Yaga had arisen and looked out of the window. The eyes of the skulls were going out. Then the white horseman flashed by, and it was daybreak. Baba Yaga went out into the yard, whistled, and the mortar, pestle, and broom appeared before her. The red horseman flashed by, and the sun rose. Baba Yaga sat in the mortar, prodded it on with the pestle, and swept her traces with the broom. Vasilisa remained alone, looked about Baba Yaga's hut, was amazed at the abundance of everything, and stopped wondering which work she should do first. For lo and behold, all the work was done. The doll was picking the last shreds of chaff from the wheat. "Ah, my savior," said Vasilisa to her doll, "you have delivered me from death." "All you have to do," answered the doll, creeping into Vasilisa's pocket, "is to cook the dinner. Cook it with the help of God, and then rest, for your health's sake." When evening came, Vasilisa set the table and waited for Baba Yaga. Dusk began to fall. The black horseman flashed by the gate, and night came. Only the skull's eyes were shining. The trees crackled, the leaves rustled. Baba Yaga was coming. Vasilisa met her. "Is everything done?" asked Yaga. "Please see for yourself, grandmother," said Vasilisa. Baba Yaga looked at everything, was annoyed that there was nothing she could complain about, and said, "Very well, then." Boy, don't we all just know people who are even angrier when there's nothing to complain about? Then she cried, "My faithful servants, my dear friends, grind my wheat." 3 pairs of hands appeared, took the wheat, and carried it out of sight. Baba Yaga ate her fill, made ready to go to sleep, and again gave her orders to Vasilisa. "Tomorrow," she commanded, "do the same work you have done today, and in addition, take the poppy seed from the bin and get rid of the dust, grain by grain. Someone threw dust in the bins out of spite." Having said this, the old witch turned to the wall and began to snore, and Vasilisa set about feeding her doll. The doll ate, and spoke as she had spoken the day before. "Pray to God, and go to sleep. The morning is wiser than the evening. Everything will be done, Vasilisushka." Next morning, Baba Yaga again left the yard in her mortar, and Vasilisa and the doll soon had all the work done. The old witch came back, looked at everything, and cried, "My faithful servants, my dear friends, press the oil out of the poppy seed." 3 pairs of hands appeared, took the poppy seed, and carried it out of sight. Baba Yaga sat down to dine. She ate, and Vasilisa stood silent. "Why do you not speak to me?" said Baba Yaga. "You stand there as though you were dumb." "I did not dare to speak," said Vasilisa. "But if you'll give me leave, I'd like to ask you something." "Go ahead, but not every question has a good answer. If you know too much, you will soon grow old." "I want to ask you, grandmother, only about what I have seen. As I was on my way to you, a horseman on a white horse, all white himself and dressed in white, overtook me. Who is he?" "He is my bright day," said Baba Yaga. "Then another horseman overtook me. He had a red horse, was red himself, and dressed in red. Who is he?" "He is my red sun." "And who is S-U-N? And who is the black horseman whom I met at your very gate, grandmother?" "He is my dark night." "And all of them are my faithful servants." He is my Batman." Vasilisa remembered the 3 pairs of hands, but kept silent. "Why don't you ask me any more?" said Baba Yaga. "That will be enough," Vasilisa replied. "You said yourself, grandmother, that one who knows too much will grow old soon." "It is well," said Baba Yaga, "that you ask only about what you have seen outside my house, not inside my house. I do not like to have my dirty linen washed in public, and I eat the over-curious. Now I shall ask you something. How do you manage to do the work I set for you?" "I am helped by the blessing of my mother," said Vasilisa. "So that is what it is!" shrieked Baba Yaga. "Get you gone, blessed daughter. I want no blessed ones in my house." She dragged Vasilisa out of the room and pushed her outside the gate, took a skull with burning eyes from the fence, stuck it on a stick, and gave it to the girl, saying, "Here is your light for your stepsisters. Take it. That is what they sent you for." Vasilisa ran homeward by the light of the skull, which went out only at daybreak, and by nightfall of the following day she reached the house. As she approached the gate, she was about to throw the skull away, thinking that surely they no longer needed light in the house. But suddenly a dull voice came from the skull, saying, "Do not throw me away. Take me to your stepmother." She looked at the stepmother's house and, seeing that there was no light in the windows, decided to enter with her skull. For the first time, she was received kindly. Her stepmother and stepsisters told her that since she had left, they had had no fire in the house, they were unable to strike a flame themselves, and whatever light was brought by the neighbors went out the moment it was brought into the house. "Perhaps your fire will last," said the stepmother. The skull was brought into the room, and its eyes kept staring at the stepmother and her daughters, and burned them. They tried to hide, but wherever they went, the eyes followed them. By morning, they were all burned to ashes. Only Vasilisa remained untouched by the fire. In the morning, Vasilisa buried the skull in the ground, locked up the house, and went to the town. A certain childless old woman gave her shelter, and there she lived, waiting for her father's return. One day she said to the woman, "I am weary of sitting without work, grandmother. Buy me some flax, the best you can get. At least I shall be spinning." The old woman brought good flax and set Vasilisa to work. She spun as fast as lightning, and her threads were even and thin as hair. She spun a great deal of yarn. It was time to start weaving it, but no comb fine enough for Vasilisa's yarn could be found, and no one would undertake to make one. Oh, I do like Vancouver. Hold on, we'll talk about that in a minute. We're almost done. Vasilisa asked her doll for aid. The doll said, "Bring me an old comb, an old shuttle, and a horse's mane. I will make a loom for you." Vasilisa got everything that was required and went to sleep, and during the night the doll made a wonderful loom for her. By the end of the winter, the linen was woven, and it was so fine that it could be passed through a needle like a thread. In the spring, the linen was bleached, and Vasilisa said to the old woman, "Grandmother, sell this linen and keep the money for yourself." The old woman looked at the linen and gasped, "No, my child, no one can wear such linen except the Tsar. I will take it to the palace." The old woman went to the palace and walked back and forth beneath the windows. The Tsar saw her and asked, "What do you want, old woman?" "Your Majesty," she answered, "I have brought rare merchandise. I do not want to show it to anyone but you." The Tsar ordered her to be brought before him, and when he saw the linen, he was amazed. "What do you want for it?" asked the Tsar. "It is no price, little father. I have brought it as a gift for you." The Tsar thanked her and rewarded her with gifts. Hydrate. I will take a drink. Thank you. The Tsar ordered shirts to be made of the linen. It was cut, but nowhere could they find a seamstress who was willing to sew them. For a long time they tried to find one, but in the end the Tsar summoned the old woman and said, "You have known how to spin and weave such linen. You must know to sew shirts of it." "It was not that I spun and wove this linen, your Majesty," said the old woman. "This is the work of a maiden to whom I give shelter." "Then let her sew the shirts." The old woman returned home and told everything to Vasilisa. "I knew all the time," said Vasilisa to her, "that I would have to do the work." She locked herself in her room and set to work. She sewed without rest, and soon a dozen shirts were ready. The old woman took them back to the Tsar, and Vasilisa washed herself, combed her hair, dressed in her finest clothes, and sat at the window. She sat there waiting to see what would happen. She saw a servant of the Tsar entering the courtyard. The messenger came into the room and said, "The Tsar wishes to see the needlewoman who made his shirts, and wishes to reward her with his own hands." Vasilisa appeared before the Tsar. When the Tsar saw Vasilisa the Beautiful, he fell madly in love with her. "No, my beauty," he said, "I will not separate from you. You shall be my wife." He took Vasilisa by her white hands, seated her by his side, and the wedding was celebrated at once. Soon Vasilisa's father returned, was overjoyed at her good fortune, and came to live in his daughter's house. Vasilisa took the old woman into her home too, and carried her doll in her pocket till the end of her life. The end. Well, that was a nice story. Except for the step family. They were burned to nothing. And here we have an awesome image. Hi. There you go. So there we have Baba Yaga's hut and her awful... Oh, there she is in her weather mortar, pestle, and broom. There we go. So yeah, she's hanging out in the mortar with her giant pestle. And it was happily ever after. So yeah, obviously we've got lots of stories of wicked stepmothers and gross stepsisters, similar to other Baba Yaga stories we've heard about daughters being sent out into the woods, being brought into Baba Yaga's hut, whether commanded to go there or they end up there. This one we get a really cool description of Baba Yaga's whole property, all these bones and skulls everywhere and flaming eyes, the really weird horsemen that signal daybreak during the day and nighttime. That's all kooky. And then of course this super helpful little doll that helps get all the work done. So that's gonna do it for Russian fairy tales. If you ever come across any fairy tales, Russian or otherwise, you think are interesting, absolutely let me know. I do love all this stuff. Next week, we'll move on to another subject for Mythology Monday. Yeah, Darrow, my wife and I've been to Vancouver a couple times over the years. Hey, Pandart, you're just in time to talk about Vancouver for a minute before we head out. Pandar, you and I know, well, some of the other people here, you missed Saturday night, I think. I don't know. Maybe you all were here just lurking. But after the Home Buddies Hobby Night group stream, I read a comic book, and then very late that night, I read a bunch of really filthy limericks. I'm not going to do that now. Maybe I'll do it again one day, because there are 1,700 of them in this book. But yeah, pretty racy stuff. Vancouver was great. We were in Vancouver for several days. It was a whole thing. We were supposed to do another kind of trip, but it's a long story. But we were in Vancouver for a bunch of days. We went to a bunch of cool museums. The architecture was neat. Some really good restaurants. We went to the police museum in Vancouver, and they talked about how it was in the worst part of town, and it was like the worst part of any major Canadian town. And we were walking around like, we're from Los Angeles, this isn't so bad. But yeah, we liked Vancouver. I'm sure if you live there, you know, and we were probably in more of the touristy areas, but yeah, Vancouver was fun. We would go back. Yeah, Vancouver, I like that. So yeah, Baba Yaga, animals talking, all sorts of neat stuff. Yeah, I've been to Vancouver, and where else was I in Canada? Somewhere else. And then Niagara Falls on both sides. But, you know, what are you going to do? Darrow definitely has more experience with Vancouver than me, so he can tell us the real ins and outs. But yes, the shirt is merely because I was in Vancouver having a good time, and I love orcas and saw the logo on a shirt. This week should be all the normal streams, so we'll be back tomorrow with toys. I don't know what we're going to open yet, but, you know, or look at. It'll be interesting, I promise. Tomorrow will be Dunes Day. There will be a stream with Jessica. I don't know how much Dune we're going to read, but we will have a stream tomorrow night. Wednesday will be... all right, Erdinsk, I will take you up on that if I'm ever in Toronto or Hamilton. Sure. Wednesday, Warhammer, and then Myths and Video Games with Pete. So all the normal streams this week. No, we're just talking about Niagara Falls. So watching WandaVision, and this is not a spoiler, but the city that Wanda takes over. I mean, this is, again, not spoilers. but it's very depressed in real life, and then she creates her own, version of the city over it, and then and like the city very much reminded us of the American side of Niagara Falls. Unfortunately, we were there a number of years ago, and it was not a great town. But what are you gonna do? And we can talk more about WandaVision some other time. We'll still give it a little time to breathe, let people catch up on the end. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow on the Doomsday stream, because I know Jessica also has thoughts. Cool. Well, I'm gonna go take care of children for today. Yeah. Oh, the Canadian side is rad. Super touristy. Lots of fun stuff to do. We were only there for a short time. I think that was actually when we went to Tim Hortons, was on the Canada side of Niagara Falls, which was very momentous. Tim Hortons. That was my first time at a Tim Hortons. Yeah, what's next Monday? You know what? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I'll look around, see what I got. I have some options, and we'll figure it out. This was a number of years ago. How long was it? I don't know. Anyway, okay, I do need to get going though. Let me check real quick to see if there's anybody I should raid. I know there are a bunch of people streaming this morning. So again, thanks for stopping by here for as long as you were able. Like I said, you have many choices for your entertainment online, and I appreciate you spending some time here with me. Coming up, let's see. Yeah, and if anyone ever has ideas on anything that I could talk about or read about or anything on stream, let me know, because I'm always open for other ideas. Yeah, I see Hyper and Mika and Bonsai Baby, and just a million people are online. Dr. Aaron is on. Realm of Misfits are on. Wow, jeez. Is everybody taking over my time slot now? What's going on here? We'll raid Hyper. They are good people. Okay, typing in the command now. Give me a second here. Yes, I do have those dice. I was actually just looking at them. I'm trying to figure out how they work, and I'll definitely be talking about them on an upcoming stream, for sure. Okay, cool. So say hi to Hyper. Let him know I sent you. Came there from here, and yeah, have a great Monday and a good start to your week, everybody. And hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow for toys. All right, have a good one. Bye bye.